Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The bullet had grazed his ribcage, tearing through the silk of his dress shirt and leaving a trail of fire across his skin. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the icy terror flooding his veins as the heavy oak door to the safe house splintered open. Julian Vane, the ruthless, icy heir to the Vane Syndicate, stumbled back against the cold porcelain of the bathroom sink, his bloody fingers clutching the shredded fabric of his shirt together in a desperate, futile attempt to hide his torso. He wasn't just hiding a wound. He was hiding the biological anomaly that would sign his death warrant if the Syndicate elders, or worse, his enemies, ever discovered it. The intruder wasn't an assassin, though. It was Kalen Routh, his childhood friend, his bodyguard, and the only man Julian had ever secretly yearned for, standing in the doorway with a gun in one hand and eyes wide with a mixture of panic and confusion. The silence that stretched between them was heavier than lead, broken only by the drip of blood hitting the marble floor. Kalen's gaze dropped from Julian's pale, sweating face to the exposed expanse of skin where the blood-soaked bandages had slipped, revealing the truth Julian had bound and buried for 24 years. Julian, Kalen breathed, the gun lowering slowly, his voice rough with a shock that shattered his usual stoic demeanor. What? What is that? Julian's breath hitched, turning into a ragged sob he tried to swallow. He pressed his back harder against the mirror, wishing he could phase through the wall and vanish. The Syndicate demanded a patriarch. A king. Not this. Not someone whose body defied the binary laws of their archaic world. Get out, Julian hissed, though his voice lacked its usual venom. It was thin, brittle. Kalen, get out. If you take one more step, you'll what? Kalen stepped into the room, the door clicking shut behind him, locking them in a suffocatingly intimate space filled with the scent of copper and expensive cologne. You're bleeding out. Let me help you. I said get out. Julian scrambled for the medical shears on the counter, brandishing them like a dagger. His vision blurred. The blood loss was making him dizzy, but the adrenaline of exposure was a jagged spike in his chest. You can't be here. You can't see this. Kalen ignored the weapon. He moved with the predatory grace of a panther, closing the distance until he was chest to chest with Julian. He didn't look at the shears. He looked into Julian's eyes, his dark irises burning with an intensity that made Julian's knees weak. Kalen reached out, his hand hovering over the bloody mess of shirt and skin. I've guarded you for 10 years, Julian. I've taken bullets for you. I've killed for you, Kalen murmured, his voice dropping to a dangerous, vibrating low. Do you think a physiological difference changes my loyalty? Do you think it changes who you are? It changes everything. Julian cried out, the fight draining out of him as tears finally spilled over. If they know, if my father knew, I'm a monster to them, Kalen. An aberration. I'm not the son he wanted. I'm a lie. You are not a lie, Kalen said firmly. He holstered his gun, his hands empty now, palms up in surrender. But you are hurt. And you are hiding. I saw the binders, Julian. I saw the scars on your chest from years of crushing yourself to fit a mold. Julian flinched. He hadn't realized Kalen had noticed the old scars. I had to survive. I know. Kalen's gaze drifted down again, not with disgust, but with a profound, terrifying curiosity. But you don't have to hide from me. Never from me. Julian shook his head frantically. You don't understand. If you really see, you'll leave. You'll be disgusted. Everyone would be. Kalen stepped closer, trapping Julian between his hard body and the sink. The heat radiating off him was intoxicating. Kalen's hands came up to rest on Julian's shaking shoulders, grounding him. Test me, Kalen challenged, his voice barely a whisper. Let me see. Show me everything you've been hiding. And if I flinch, if I look away, you can use those shears on me. But I won't. Julian trembled, his grip on the shirt faltering. Why? Why do you want to see? Kalen's eyes darkened, a flash of raw hunger replacing the concern. Because I want to know all of you. Every secret. Every scar. Every part of you that you think is unlovable. I want to own that knowledge, Julian. Let me see. Then I'll keep it. I'll keep it safe, and I'll keep you. The offer hung in the air, a twisted vow of protection and possession. Julian looked at the man he had loved from a distance for years. Kalen wasn't asking to just look. He was asking for Julian's total surrender. For a man like Julian, who controlled the city's underworld with an iron fist, surrender was foreign. It was terrifying. But the blood was warm on his skin, and the coldness of the world outside was unbearable. Julian's fingers loosened. The ruined shirt fell away. Julian squeezed his eyes shut, turning his head to the side, unable to bear the weight of Kalen's judgment. He waited for the gasp, the recoil, the inevitable rejection. Silence. Then, a warm, rough touch. Kalen's fingers grazed the soft skin of his side, just below the ribs, tracing the curve that Julian had spent a lifetime cursing. The touch wasn't clinical. It was reverent. Open your eyes, Julian, Kalen commanded softly. Julian forced his eyes open. Kalen was kneeling now, eye level with the wound, but his gaze was encompassing the entirety of Julian's form. There was no disgust. There was only a darkening awe, a worshipful intensity that made Julian's breath catch in his throat. Beautiful, Kalen whispered. He dipped the cloth into the warm water of the basin and began to clean the wound with agonizing gentleness. You are perfectly balanced. Chaos and order. Manant. Something divine. Stop, Julian choked out, his cheeks burning. Don't mock me. I would never, Kalen said, standing up slowly, his eyes locking onto Julian's again. I'm angry, Julian. Angry that you thought you had to hide this from me. Did you think I was so shallow? Did you think my devotion was conditional? It's not about you. Julian snapped, defensive walls trying to rise again. It's about the legacy. The Vane bloodline. To hell with the bloodline, Kalen growled, stepping in and grabbing Julian's chin, forcing him to look up. You are the Vane legacy. You are the strongest person I know. This, he gestured vaguely to Julian's body. This is just geography. It's territory. And I'm a very territorial man. The air in the room shifted, charged with a sudden, electric eroticism. The fear of exposure transmuted into the thrill of being seen, truly seen, for the first time. Julian felt a strange heat pooling low in his belly, a reaction to Kalen's dominance that he hadn't anticipated. You said, you'd keep it, Julian whispered, his voice trembling. I will, Kalen vowed. He leaned in, his lips brushing against Julian's ear. I'll be the vault where you keep your secrets. No one touches you but me. No one sees you but me. But in exchange, Kalen pulled back, his eyes searching Julian's face. In exchange, Julian asked, his heart hammering against his ribs. In exchange, you stop hiding from me. You stop binding when we are alone. You let me take care of you. Kalen's thumb brushed over Julian's lower lip. We are partners, Julian. In crime, in blood, and now in this. Do you accept? It was a dangerous bargain. To give Kalen this power was to hand him the keys to Julian's destruction. But looking into Kalen's eyes, Julian realized that Kalen had held the power to destroy him for years. He knew where the bodies were buried, quite literally. This was just one more layer. I accept, Julian breathed. Kalen didn't smile. He looked satisfied, like a wolf that had finally cornered its mate. He finished cleaning the wound, his hands lingering on Julian's skin longer than necessary, his touch searing. When the bandage was applied, Kalen didn't step away. He pulled Julian into a crushing embrace, burying his face in the crook of Julian's neck. They won't find us here, Kalen murmured against his skin. Rest. Tomorrow, we handle the traitor who shot you. But tonight belongs to us. Julian sagged against him, the exhaustion finally taking over. For the first time in his life, the secret that had been a cage felt like a key. He wasn't alone in the dark anymore. The rain battered against the safe house windows, a rhythmic drumming that usually soothed Julian. But tonight, sleep was elusive. He lay in the massive bed, the duvet pulled up to his chin, watching Kalen pace by the window. Kalen had stripped off his tactical gear, wearing only a black t-shirt and sweatpants, his silhouette formidable against the lightning flashes. You're overthinking, Kalen said without turning around. He knew Julian's breathing patterns better than his own. I'm thinking about the board meeting next week, Julian lied. He was thinking about the heat of Kalen's hands. Kalen turned, walking back to the bed. He sat on the edge, the mattress dipping under his weight. The board is irrelevant if you're dead. The shooter was professional, Julian. High caliber. Someone inside the family sold you out. Julian sat up, wincing as the movement pulled at his stitches. My uncle. It has to be. Marcus. Kalen nodded, a dark look crossing his face. He's been eyeing the seat for years. If he suspects. He doesn't know this. Julian gestured to himself. He just thinks I'm soft. That I lack the virility to lead. Kalen let out a short, dry laugh. If they only knew. You have more spine than the lot of them combined. He reached out, his hand resting on Julian's knee over the duvet. But we need a plan. Marcus will try again. We can't stay here forever. I need to go back, Julian said, his eyes hardening. The vulnerability of the bathroom was fading, replaced by the steel of the vain air. I need to walk into that meeting, stare him in the face, and dare him to make a move. Risky, Kalen analyzed. But bold. I like it. But there's a problem, Julian hesitated. The medical report. If I was treated at a hospital, it would be sealed. But here, I have no documentation. If Marcus demands a physical, which he has the right to do after an assassination attempt to prove fitness for duty, I'm finished. Kalen was silent for a moment, his thumb rubbing circles on Julian's knee. Then, a slow, predatory smile curved his lips. Let him demand it. We'll give him a doctor. Julian frowned. What? I have a contact. Dr. Eris. Disgraced, unlicensed, but brilliant. And heavily in debt to me, Kalen explained. He'll sign whatever paper we put in front of him. He'll swear on his life that you are male, fit, and untouched by any defects. Perjury. Survival, Kalen corrected. But to pull this off, Julian, you have to trust me completely. Eris will have to examine you to make the fake records look authentic. He'll see. Julian's stomach churned. No one else. He won't talk. Kalen's voice went cold, a promise of violence in the tone. I'll be in the room. If his eyes wander, I'll remove them. If he speaks a word of it outside that room, I'll remove his tongue. But we need the paper trail. Julian looked at Kalen, seeing the absolute resolution in his face. Kalen was willing to become a monster to protect Julian's secret. It was terrifyingly romantic. Okay, Julian whispered. Call him. Kalen nodded, pulling out a burner phone. But before he dialed, he leaned forward, capturing Julian's lips in a sudden, fierce kiss. It wasn't tentative. It was claiming. It tasted of danger and iron and rain. Julian froze for a second, then melted, his hands clutching Kalen's shirt, pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both were breathless. Consider that a down payment, Kalen rasped, his eyes dark. Once we deal with Marcus, once you're safe, we're going to have a very long conversation about why you thought you were unlovable. Julian felt a flush rise to his cheeks, not of shame this time, but of anticipation. And if I don't want to talk? Then, Kalen smirked, dialing the number. I'll just have to find other ways to convince you. The week that followed was a blur of calculated maneuvers. Dr. Eris had come and gone, shaking and pale under Kalen's hawkish supervision, leaving behind a pristine, falsified medical dossier. They returned to the city, not cowering, but in a convoy of armored SUVs, straight to the Vane Tower. The boardroom was a cavern of glass and steel, suspended 50 floors above the city. 12 men in expensive suits sat around the mahogany table. At the head sat Marcus Vane, Julian's uncle, looking smug. I must say, nephew, Marcus drawled as Julian entered, flanked by Kalen. We were surprised to see you. Rumors of your demise were greatly exaggerated, it seems. Though you look pale. Nothing a few days of rest couldn't cure, uncle, Julian said smoothly, taking his seat at the opposite end of the table. He wore a tailored three-piece suit, cut to hide the bandages, the stiff collar masking his racing pulse. Is that so? Marcus leaned forward, steepling his fingers. The bylaws are clear, Julian. Any heir sustaining a critical injury must submit to a health evaluation by the board's physician to ensure no lasting cognitive or physical impairments. Of course, Julian signaled to Kalen. Kalen stepped forward, dropping a thick leather folder onto the table. It slid across the polished wood, stopping inches from Marcus's hand. Independent evaluation conducted by Dr. Eris, vetted by the syndicate's medical council, Kalen announced, his voice booming in the quiet room. Full physical, blood work, cognitive scans. He is in peak condition. In fact, The doctor noted his testosterone levels are higher than yours, Marcus. A ripple of suppressed laughter went through the room. Marcus's face reddened. He snatched the folder, flipping through the pages frantically. He was looking for the weakness, the secret he suspected but couldn't name. He found nothing but data confirming Julian as the perfect male specimen. This is irregular, Marcus sputtered. Dr. Eris is a respected specialist, Julian cut in, his voice sharp as a razor. Unless you are questioning the validity of the medical counsel? Or perhaps. Julian stood up, leaning his palms on the table, wincing internally at the pain in his ribs, but showing nothing on his face. You are disappointed that I survived the ambush you paid for? The room went deathly silent. Accusations, Julian, Marcus hissed. Dangerous ones. I have the shooter, Julian lied effortlessly. He didn't, but Marcus didn't know that. He's in the basement. He's very talkative. Kalen has a way with words. Marcus's eyes flicked to Kalen. Kalen stood behind Julian's chair, his hand resting casually on the backrest, a silent sentinel. He stared at Marcus with a look that promised a slow, agonizing end. Marcus swallowed. He looked at the medical file, then at the united front of Julian and Kalen. He realized he had lost. If he pushed for another exam, he looked desperate. If he denied the assassination attempt, he looked guilty. I see, Marcus closed the folder. Well, I am glad to see you recovered, nephew. The family needs its strength. The family is strong, Julian said, his eyes locking with Marcus's. Because I lead it. The meeting dissolved into administrative trivia, but the power shift was palpable. Julian had won. Not by fighting with fists, but by wielding the very secret that could have destroyed him, shielded by the man who loved him. Later, in the privacy of the penthouse office, Julian poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to Kalen. We did it, Julian said, watching the city lights below. You did it, Kalen corrected, taking a sip. I just provided the paperwork. Julian turned to him. You did more than that. You saved me. In every way a person can be saved. Kalen set his glass down. He walked over to Julian, backing him against the floor-to-ceiling window. The city sprawled out behind them, a kingdom of light and shadow. I told you, Kalen said, his voice dropping to that rough, intimate timbre that made Julian shiver. I saw you. I kept your secret. Now. He reached out, his hand sliding under Julian's suit jacket, resting warm and possessive over the hidden bandages. You're mine. Julian looked up at him, the fear gone, replaced by a fierce, burning joy. I always was. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Julian take control of his destiny, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you trust a friend with a secret that could ruin your life? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.